All right, welcome back. Digital Imaging here. What we're going to do is we're going to do this practice 2 here. So we're going to be exploring using the pen tool. And the pen tool is a drawing tool that you can use to make any types of shapes. So we've explored using some of our other shape tools here, but we're going to be using the pen tool. So if you remember, any shapes that you make inside Illustrator are made up of what are called paths and anchor points. So like if I make a square here, it has these what are called anchor points in the corner, and then the lines in between them are called paths here. Okay. So we're going to be using our pen tool. The pen tool is takes a little bit of time of getting used to using, but it is a really powerful tool. But it is kind of hard at the very beginning here. So you want to make sure that you're using the same workspace that I'm using. So if you go up to Window and go to Workspace, we're going to be on Essentials Classic here. And then that way you've got all the tools that I have here. And then we're working on our student layer right here inside our layers here. Okay. So I've got my document open here, and we're first going to just start making some basic lines here. So I am going to get rid of my fill. And so here's my fill. I've got this selected in the front here. I'm going to click on my none box and get rid of that. And then I'm going to give this a stroke, and I'm going to change the color. And that way you can kind of see. I'm actually going to use blue because that way you can kind of see what I'm making here. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit thicker here. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do, so with the pen tool, if I click once, I can make a anchor point. And then if I click again, I can make a straight line. Okay. Now, if I click and hold my mouse button down, I can pull out these what are called Bezier handles. And depending on which direction I pull and then how far, you can see that I can change that arc. Okay. Now, with the pen tool, because I've made this path here, you can now see that my line is no longer straight. Now it's curved here. So um, if I want to edit that line, I can hold my Alt key and I can pull that handle in, and now I can make a straight line here. So now you'll see that I can make a straight line. Okay. Now if I want to complete what's called complete this path, I can go back to where I started, and then you see that my pen tool here has that little circle right next to it. That means I'm going to complete that path here. Okay. I'm just going to delete this because I don't need that. All right. So for some of these lines, you're going to be making a straight line, and then other ones, we're going to be making a curved line on the very first one. So on all of these, you've got this part here where it's going to be our first anchor point, and then this red handle here is going to be where you're going to pull your Bezier handle out to make our line here. Okay. So I'm going to make this first one. So this first one is going to be my first anchor point. So I'm going to click, hold my mouse button down. I'm going to pull this handle out here. And so I'm not making a line just yet, but what I'm doing is making a curve for my very first line. So instead of having a first line on my first path, now I've got a curved line that follows this curve here. Okay. So and I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to pull up. And then I'm going to click and drag. And I'm going to pull over like that. Okay. Now, to get out of this, I can press enter and I can get out, or I can grab a different tool, and now I've got my line. Okay. If I wanted to make this line like a little bit thicker, I could go to my stroke here and make this a little bit thicker there and do that. Okay. So we're going to first and move on to this first section here. So I'm going to grab my pen tool again. So same thing, we're going to be making this kind of like wave line. So I'm going to click and drag and pull up to make this first line. And I want this to be straight, like straight vertical. So I'm going to hold my shift key while I pull up here. And then I'm going to let go. And then now I'm going to click and hold my mouse button down and click and pull down. And do something like that. Okay. And then I'm going to let go. So there's my first path. It's curved. Now I'm going to move on to my next one. Click and pull up. Click and pull down. I'm going to move over a little bit and then click and pull up. And then click and pull down like that. And then I'm going to press enter. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to this next one. So same thing. I've got my pin tool. I'm going to click and drag with my mouse button and pull this first curve here to make this first line, because I want this first path to be curved, and I can't get that unless I pull out these handles. So I'm going to click and drag and pull up here. I'm going to go over to this next one, click and drag and pull down, click and drag and pull up. My lines aren't quite perfect, but I'm trying to get it as close as I can. So you can see that, I pulled out a little bit farther on that handle than I did on the other one. Okay, but I'm trying to get it kind of as close as I can here. Okay, and I'm always going towards that red dot, like that. Okay, and I'll press enter. And this one, I'm going to click and drag and pull down and pull up to this corner here to make my first line. So I'm going to click and drag and pull over like this. So you'll notice, depending on like the direction and kind of like the steepness of my line, of how I pull with my line, you'll see that my line is curved. So like these lines, are kind of like that waveform line. But then I've got like a little bubble kind of part to it here. Okay, and that's because it's all based on that first line that I made, and then the direction that I'm pulling with my line here. Okay. And then this last one, this egg shape, is kind of hard. So I'm going to go all the way around and finish where I started. So this first one, I'm going to go to my anchor point, which is going to be right here. And then I'm going to click and drag and pull up. Go over to this next one. I'm going to click and drag and pull down, and then let go. And then now I'm going to go back to where I started. So again, you'll see that circle appear, and that means I'm going to close off that path, or I'm going to complete that path, and it's going to be all one solid shape here. So I'm going to click and hold my mouse button down, and then pull up like that. Okay. If you want to adjust the line, we can. So like I can also go into my line tool. I like to put a little cap on the end. So you'll see, instead of like a flat edge on the end, it's going to give this cap here. If I want to make this line a little bit thicker, I can, Okay. So the Bezier tool, the pen tool, is kind of a hard tool at the very beginning. It just takes a little bit of practice here, but you'll soon get the hang of it.